In a world devastated by a deadly virus that turns people into bloodthirsty savages, the few survivors struggle to stay alive amid the chaos. Between clashes with relentless hordes, human betrayals, and a threat that never rests, a young girl and her protector must make choices that mean the difference between life and death. A journey filled with tension, action, and heartbreaking moments, where every step could be the last. So today we will see a movie called Silent Zone. An emergency broadcast on television announces the existence of a new virus that has appeared at an airport. The infected become incredibly violent, and soon the airport is in flames. 2 months later, the virus has spread across the entire world and turned into a global pandemic that transforms people into zombie-like beings called savages, seen as furious beasts. The government tries to enforce quarantine, but many citizens protest and fight for the rights of the savages, insisting they are still people. The army has to take to the streets and confront civilians in an effort to send them home, only making the situation worse. One afternoon, all television channels lose their signal. Abigail and her brother receive a call from their father, a pilot, who explains that he is busy helping people and promises they will be safe with their mother. At that moment, they hear a noise coming from upstairs, so the family runs out of the house. Just as they are about to get into the car, a savage leaps and attacks their mother, killing her. Abigail immediately hides under the vehicle and has to watch as the creature also attacks her brother. When a nearby patrol siren sounds, the savage flees. Shortly after, Abigail hears her brother calling her name, but then her mother turns into a savage and kills him. As she cries, her mother hears her and goes after her until Cassius nearly shoots. He rescues Abigail and she thanks him with a hug. Meanwhile, her brother also begins to transform, so Cassius asks Abigail to close her eyes before shooting the boy. 10 years later, the world is in a post-apocalyptic state. Few humans remain and nature has reclaimed the cities. In the forest, Abigail and Cassius, now teenagers, are hunting. It is clear Cassius has trained Abigail well, as she kills a deer with a precise shot, though he scolds her for being too hasty and lacking patience. At nightfall, the duo stops to camp and Cassius makes sure all the wire traps are set. A few hours after falling asleep, one of the wires triggers and startles Cassius. He leaves the tent to investigate and finds fibers caught in the wire. Then he hears noises nearby, so he rushes to calm the horses and draws his weapon just in time to shoot a savage approaching, likely a scout sent by the horde. Cassius wakes Abigail so they can leave. In the following days, the pair continues traveling, and whenever the horses rest, Cassius keeps training Abigail. One afternoon, they stop when they see a car nearby and quickly draw their weapons. They watch a man take down a savage, while a second one creeps up behind him. Abigail wants to help but shoots too quickly, injuring both the man and the savage stalking him. The creature inside the car comes out to feed, and Cassius is forced to kill it. Afterward, Abigail searches the vehicle for supplies, while Cassius finishes the wounded man with a machete before taking his shoes. A radio in the car tries to contact the driver, and Abigail wants to warn them about the savage horde in the area, but Cassius tells her to ignore it. At that moment, more cars arrive, and a group of survivors surrounds them with weapons. They check the body and, seeing he was killed by a human, assume the pair murdered him just to rob him. When the leader threatens to kill them, Cassius and Abigail strike the two nearest people, knock them down, and take their weapons. The situation grows tense as both groups aim at each other, until a pregnant woman named Megan steps out of a car to try to calm them. Just then, the horses grow restless and a savage horde surrounds them. Everyone opens fire at once, killing as many creatures as possible to hold them back. They are too many, so despite their efforts, the savages close in and Cassius and Abigail are forced to use their swords for close combat. However, the other survivors only know how to use firearms, and soon the creatures start killing them one by one. A woman tries to prepare a Molotov cocktail, but a savage attacks her, making her fall onto a car and causing a small explosion that blasts Cassius backward. One survivor is bitten and tries to end his life, but runs out of bullets and turns instead. The leader is caught by a particularly large savage and slowly beaten to death, while Megan's husband, David, is also attacked by a wild dog, though he manages to kick it away. Abigail helps the couple into a car and Cassius kills a few more creatures before joining them. When they start the engine, a savage clings to the roof of the vehicle, so Cassius slams the brakes to throw it off. Abigail takes her belongings before they finally escape. The large savage realizes his mate has been killed and roars furiously. Back on the road, Abigail checks the ammunition and discovers most of it was lost. Megan explains they were traveling to a riverside colony and that she is 35 weeks pregnant, with the baby about to be born. However, Abigail and Cassius believe searching for colonies is pointless. They have seen many, and none survive. Suddenly, the car breaks down, leaving the group no choice but to continue on foot. Moments later, they reach an abandoned town and decide to spend the night there, securing a building to make sure no savages are nearby and setting up camp. Megan offers to share her food, but Cassius and Abigail only eat what they hunt to avoid infections. The couple explains they spoke by radio with the colony and know there are abundant supplies and medical staff, but reaching it takes a week, which is too risky. In return, Abigail tells them she and Cassius are trying to reach the west coast and escape to the islands by boat. After Cassius sets the traps, he pulls out a map and points out the route to the colony, but the couple refuses to follow, insisting the horde will return for revenge. Abigail talks privately with Cassius, insisting they should help and that maybe this colony is different. They argue, but Cassius still refuses. In the middle of the night, the horde finds the broken car and follows the trail to the town. Meanwhile, the men cannot sleep, and Cassius shows David he always keeps a spare bullet in his pocket in case he is bitten. David only has a cigarette and a sprained ankle. They talk for a while and form a bond, convincing Cassius to help them reach the colony. The next morning, Abigail hears a noise and goes down to investigate. Suddenly, a savage attacks and makes her drop her weapon, but she quickly kills it with her machete. A second savage chases her downstairs, and Abigail uses a broken window to throw it out of the building. She nearly falls too, but Cassius grabs her in time. When the horde arrives at the site, the group is already gone. A savage trips over a wire and causes a small explosion that kills it. Later, Abigail recognizes the area and remembers there is a civil airport nearby where her father used to fly a small plane. Cassius wants to keep moving, thinking an airport would only let the horde trap them, not to mention all the planes are likely gone. However, Abigail and the couple vote to go there, leaving Cassius no choice but to follow. After walking for a while, they find an old building beside a car with a recently killed man inside. Cassius tells Abigail to search the building for supplies, but she refuses to stop and rest because she thinks they are not alone. She only finds some coffee and does not see the family hiding in one of the rooms. Cassius checks the car trunk and finds a wheelchair, which they use to carry Megan. After the group leaves, the horde arrives at the building and massacres the family in seconds. When they finally reach the airport, no planes are in sight and David and Cassius begin to argue about what to do. But Abigail interrupts them when she finds her father's hangar. Fortunately, there is a plane inside and David has the mechanical knowledge to repair it. While he works, Cassius and Abigail search the building. Abigail finds a photograph of her and her father on the floor and hangs it back on the wall. At that moment, the horde arrives, forcing the group to board the plane, though it is not ready. Cassius opens fire to hold them back and David manually spins the propeller to help the plane start. Abigail's flight knowledge is limited and the aircraft is slow, so the horde closes in too quickly. Luckily, they soon find the right controls and the plane begins to gain speed. A savage manages to cling to the door, and Cassius must shoot it to make it fall. Then the plane takes off and the group escapes. However, they only fly for a short time before the craft starts failing and descending. Abigail tries to land, but the plane crashes into a group of trees and hits the ground. Fortunately, it lands on its wheels and everyone survives with only minor injuries. There is a train station nearby, so after making sure it is empty, they decide to rest there. Cassius pulls out the map and discovers it will take them 2 days to reach the colony. so they plan to leave at dawn. Abigail counts the ammunition and realizes there is very little left. Megan and Cassius share some food, and he admits that Abigail reminds him of his wife. He confesses that he had to kill his infected family, and that later she took her own life because she could not endure it any longer. Cassius also tells the story of a boy from his town who was bitten. Since the wound did not hit any major artery, it took him a couple of days to fully transform. Meanwhile, David looks for a private place to check his ankle and reveals that it is not sprained. The wound is actually a bite, and he knows he must isolate himself. The next day, the group continues walking under the scorching sun. David feels very ill, and Cassius notices blood on his leg. They wait for the women to walk ahead before pushing David against a tree to examine his ankle, confirming their suspicions. Cassius gives him the option to confess it himself, but warns that if he does not do so soon, he will shoot him at night. The group finds a house with the lights on, and as they approach, a voice asks what they want. Cassius thinks it is too dangerous, but Abigail steps forward and explains that they need help, swearing they mean no harm and mentioning the pregnant woman. Norton opens the door and points a gun at them, asking that they leave all their weapons in a chest outside. Then he invites them in with a friendly and hospitable attitude. Cassius points out that the house has electricity, and Norton explains that he is an engineer who has built devices that provide power and hot water. He also mentions a wife but ignores Megan when she asks where she is. Norton shares bread and vegetables with them, and Abigail is glad to take a shower. Cassius finally manages to connect his laptop and look at old photos, discovering that his wife was pregnant before the pandemic. When he goes to see Megan, she admits she is afraid because she has not felt the baby move since they arrived at the house, and she makes him promise that if something happens, he will protect her child. Later, Norton shares a drink with everyone and explains that he has lived there for 20 years, but that his wife is no longer around. He has heard of the colony on the radio, but he is not interested in joining, preferring solitude instead. Then Norton begins ranting about people obsessed with returning to the old ways, claiming humanity deserved the pandemic for destroying the planet and its ethics. He even compares the virus to evolution, saying only the strong have survived. Cassius notices a strange knife on a table, but Norton snatches it away. Feeling increasingly unwell, David runs to the bathroom and sees the infection spreading. When he comes out, he discovers his friends are unconscious. Norton, now wearing a lab coat and holding a strange machine, has spiked their drinks. Detecting David is infected, he activates the device, which emits a sound that causes unbearable pain. Norton explains that the device is like a dog whistle that only affects the infected. Before David loses consciousness, the horde finds the train station and continues its hunt. Moments later, David wakes up to see the whole group tied up in a basement. Norton is there taking notes for his experiment and reveals that he has his infected wife locked in a cage. He releases her and controls her with the device to attack the group. Cassius and Abigail kick her several times to hold her back, which makes the woman turn toward David, who manages to break free from his ropes and fight back. They struggle only for a few seconds before he overpowers her, and Norton must use the machine to prevent him from rescuing the others. However, David is not fully transformed yet, so he endures the pain and breaks the remaining ropes. Cassius grabs a weapon and tries to shoot Norton, who immediately flees. The group runs upstairs and slams the door behind them, just as Norton begins hacking it with an axe. Abigail steals the keys to Norton's car and Cassius retrieves their belongings before hitting David, intending to kill him. The women convince him to wait. On the way to the car, Megan discovers that Norton's power source is broken. Norton comes outside to watch them leave while his wife growls at him. As the car reaches the forest, the horde catches up and chases them. The group sees lights in the distance, a sign they have found the colony, and they accelerate, but the road is blocked by a tree, forcing them to continue on foot. The horde closes in and they open fire, but David runs out of bullets. Knowing he will turn, he tells the others to leave while he buys them time. The couple says an emotional goodbye, and before they go, Cassius gives him his spare bullet. Now alone, David smokes his cigarette and fights the savages hand to hand, killing a few. However, the large savage surprises him from behind and snaps his neck. The rest of the creatures pursue the others, so Abigail shoots to protect Cassius while escorting Megan, shouting for help. The colony guards open fire and kill the savages chasing them. The rest of the horde, upon seeing the bodies and the lights, retreats into the forest. The survivors enter the colony and Megan is taken to the infirmary, where a midwife tends to her the next morning. After meeting the colony's leader, Cassius tells Abigail they should leave soon because humans cannot be trusted. But she, tired of running, ignores him. Cassius speaks with the midwife, who tells him the baby is fine, but the mother has only a few hours left to live. He visits his friend and learns the baby girl will be named Hope. Megan reminds him of his promise and hands him a family locket before she dies. Meanwhile, Norton reaches the forest and finds all the bodies, then spots the colony. At that moment, the horde tries to attack him, but he immediately controls them with his device and announces it is time for revenge. Back at the colony, Cassius takes care of Hope and wonders what to do. Abigail mingles with the local teenagers and attends a small night party. Alcohol flows and 2 guards fall asleep, allowing some youngsters to enter a tunnel. Abigail follows them and discovers a strange remote control, but Roderick stops her. He explains that the entire fishing village is mined, and the control will trigger the explosion if the savages invade. The humans can survive using a hatch that leads to an abandoned dam. The next morning, Norton sees a guard in a boat and asks for help. After disposing of him, a savage leaps into the water and climbs into the colony to kill the other guard. Now Norton can send the entire horde to attack while the survivors are slaughtered. Some armed colonists rush to fight, and Abigail saves Roderick from a savage before assigning tasks to the teenagers. Those with weapons must take higher positions to shoot, and Roderick must lead the survivors to the dam while she looks for Cassius. As panic spreads through the colony, the midwife takes Hope so Cassius can go after Abigail. The armed colonists begin to run out of bullets and the leader tries to flee, but a creature kills him instantly. Finally, Abigail and Cassius reunite and fight the creatures together using both firearms and close combat. Seeing an opportunity, they try to join the evacuation, but Cassius is distracted when he sees Norton and is tackled by a savage. He manages to stab it, but Norton finds him and starts beating him while talking about making the world safer. Cassius manages to get up and shoves Norton against a wall, smashing the device repeatedly until it breaks. Then he runs back to Abigail as the creatures swarm Norton and kill him. The survivors cross the tunnel and reach the dam, asking Roderick to trigger the explosives, but he hesitates because Abigail has not yet emerged. A large savage wolf tries to attack Abigail, so Cassius hits it with an oar. When it falls, Abigail notices its bracelet and is horrified to recognize it as her father's, leaving her frozen. Cassius pulls her out of that state and drags her to the hatch. They enter the tunnel just before Roderick, tired of waiting, detonates the place, killing all the creatures in the colony. Afterwards, the survivors discover an infected man among them. As Cassius tries to calm him, a savage leaps and kills him, then attacks Cassius, starting a fight. They strike each other until they fall to the ground, where the creature nearly bites him. This time, Abigail is patient and waits for the perfect moment to shoot. The survivors watch as the colony burns and wonder what to do. Abigail tells them they can build a new home at the dam, and Cassius reveals that he stole Norton's notebook, which contains the instructions to build a generator. I hope you enjoyed the video.